Welcome back. I'm Alfred Lamont Weber, and I have the great privilege today to be with Chris Burres, who is the co-owner and scientist at C60 Evo. And that is a special company because it has been manufacturing C60 now for almost 30 years. And it has been using the Nobel Prize winning, that is, was given the Nobel Prize in 1985 for the discovery of C60 and of the highest standards. Now, so Chris, I would like to ask you first, what drew you as a scientist to C60?
So that's it's almost a loaded question, and it's interesting. First, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I'm really looking forward to our experience today. So my journey is really more of an entrepreneur's journey that involved science because it made sense for the entrepreneur and me, if that piece makes sense. So really, from a very young age, I was a 14-year-old boy. I had on my wall a picture of a Lamborghini, and I still want a Lamborghini. Like, that's something that's in me. And at some point, and I don't even, because this was pre-internet, like way before the internet, somehow I got an article of like, what you need to do if you want to own a Lamborghini. And the article was really cut and dry. It said, if you want to own a Lamborghini, be a brain surgeon. If you want to own multiple Lamborghinis, be an entrepreneur. And so, like, if one's good, then more than one has to be better, right? So I said, I really at age 14, I knew I was going to be some sort of entrepreneur. And when I went to college, I've always been really good in math, always been really good in science, always like a voracious reader and consumer of information. And so this kind of affinity for science and math kind of led me in the direction of engineering. Additionally, engineering is one of those kind of potentially short college careers that can lead with a higher salary and therefore have the funding to start whatever company I was going to start. It turned out that I actually started the first company, and kind of the parent company is SES Research, and now we've launched the C60 Evo. Started that in 1991 while I was still in college, and we're the largest manufacturer and distributor of carbon nanomaterials on the planet. And the way it really started is my business partner was working at the Texas Center for Superconductivity. So it's a superconductivity research center that's based at the University of Houston. Go Cougs. And he was working there separating these materials, fullerenes. And one day his professor came in, Dr. Paul Chu, kind of very famous in superconductivity world, came in and said, well, you guys are young guys. This material at the time was selling for $6,000 a gram. Why don't you go off and start a company? And so he grabbed me because I was studying mechanical engineering to help design the equipment, and then kind of put our heads together and put together a business plan. And really we started manufacturing back in 1991.
Wow. Now, what is it that drew NASA into buying up raw C60 in 2018? I'm kind of putting different pieces of the puzzle.
Pieces of the story.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's first off, like buying all of the industry out, and we'll talk about that here in a second, is probably a misnomer. Why NASA might be interested in general in this material is pretty obvious. So really early on, it's an amazing material, and what I can say is that carbon 60 tends to perform as well or better than the current best material in every application. Almost every application that you could use a buckyball in, it outperforms or performs as good as the current best material. It's just not ubiquitous yet because it's very expensive to manufacture and and we're actually working on different manufacturing techniques. So it's harder than diamond. It turns into a diamond. It has 6-fold symmetry, so it can hold a whole lot of electrons, which is why it makes a good material in batteries. It's great in solar cells. It's great in battery cells. And so the kind of interest that NASA would have in the molecule, also it's a Nobel Prize winning molecule. So the people who discovered that molecule, they discovered it in 1985. They actually won the Nobel Prize in 1996. It's a short 11 years. Most people who win a Nobel Prize, it's like 30, 40, 50 plus years later that they award the Nobel Prize, because they're like, remember that thing you did so long ago? It turns out that it was really, really important. In this case, they knew that the buckyball was going to be incredibly important really quickly, because they figured it was basically a 3D version of benzene. Benzene is everywhere. It's in plastics, it's in medicines. Really, we don't have modern society without the benzene ring. So that's why they won that Nobel Prize so quickly. And so early on, friends and family would ask me, what do you do? And I would tell them carbon nanomaterial. And then they would go, well, what's that used for? And I would kind of give the description I just gave. And I said, in reality, at the time, its biggest use was funding. So if you wanted to get funded for a project and you wrote a proposal based on recently Nobel Prize winning molecule, you are very likely to get funded. And so funding is that initial thing. So NASA's done projects. I've been to NASA. We've actually done some contract work at NASA. And in 2018, I don't know who even started this conversation, but there was some conversation that NASA bought up there was a conversation that NASA bought out the largest manufacturer. We're the largest manufacturer of the product. And we've never even had a conversation with them in that regard. And then kind of your question was, have they purchased, did they purchase large quantities or all of it? No, they haven't.
Okay. Now, having asked those two questions, which I was very curious about, because people have various personal stories about how they got to C60.
Yeah.
Our audience is going to be very interested in what is C60 and what are some of the potential benefits of C60, slowing down aging, reducing cellular damage, improve your immune system, weight loss, improve vision, all of those things.
Well, that's a really long list.
Yeah, and perhaps you could go into something of a scientific sort of explanation. I know that there are a series of bottles of C60 Evo right behind you, but that if people start taking the C60 Evo, how that benefits them potentially based on studies and based on science, and what the benefits might be. Is that sort of a
well, I think it's a great question, and I want to dive into it. I'd like to kind of create a little bit of a framework, right? So I just described that it's great in battery cells and photoelectric cells, and you put it in tires and inks and paints. And then now your question comes back, which is, what are the benefits? Does it help with arthritis and people talking about macular degeneration? That's a really big jump, right? And so I want to kind of explain a little bit about that, because really the same reason that they won the Nobel Prize is the same reason that they did a pivotal study in 2012. And it was a toxicity study. Again, benzene is ubiquitous. We don't have modern society without it. The scientists thought that this buckyball, which is, has a soccer ball shape, was going to be as ubiquitous as benzene, in which case you've got to do toxicity testing on it, because it turns out benzene is very toxic. You don't want to be around exposed benzene after it's processed into medicines and plastics. It's okay, but prior to that. So they kind of assumed that this buckyball was going to be toxic. They did this toxicity study, and really I want to make a demarcation of for industrial purposes, there's C60, and in fact, C60 improperly processed and C60 that has been processed to be water soluble is known to be harmful. ESS60 is C60 that's been processed for safer human consumption. So anytime I'm talking about what you're putting in your body, ESS60, anytime like industrial applications, C60. So they took this, in this toxicity study, they gave rats water, rats olive oil, and rats olive oil with ESS60. Instead of being toxic, those rats lived 90% longer than the control group, which is the single longest longevity experiment on mammals known to man. I'm still looking for, if anyone in your audience is aware of a longevity study that's longer on mammals, I would love to hear it. I've been searching for 2 years. This is the best one. Not only did they live twice as long, those rats died without tumors. So a typical Worcester rat and the rats in this control group died at 32 months. The rats given olive oil with ESS60, so the C60 Evo formulation, those rats lived 62 months, and none of those rats had tumors. And so now that's the piece that starts getting people going down this road of, okay, well, I'm interested potentially in putting this in your body. By the way, if you're interested in putting it in your body, you want to be looking for ESS60 because C60 on its own has been shown to be harmful. There's literature out there that shows that. So now we've got these, and you've asked me kind of share some examples, and now it's a supplement. And I want to talk a little bit about my journey, because that list that you gave, I commented that it was a long list, and it is a long list, and it's an amazing list. And if you're out there listening, and if you're like me, then your kind of red alarms going off, like if it's too good to be true, then it's probably not true. That's going off. I'm as skeptical as anybody out there. I've got a scientific training that causes me to be skeptical. So people start calling us and giving us testimonials and talking about all the amazing things that it's doing for them. And at first, I don't know exactly what to do with it. In fact, I like to talk about how I ended in a supplement journey, right? Most people who are going down supplements who sell supplements do it one of 2 ways. Get into the supplement business one of 2 ways. One of them is they decide they want to be incredibly wealthy, and they decide to create a supplement and market it, right? I have nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with anybody being wealthy. That's just not how I ended up in this situation. The other path is, often people have their own kind of physical issues, or somebody in their family has physical issues, and they end up doing their own research and creating a supplement, and they're out to save the world. I have no problem with saving the world, but that's not how I ended up on this path. Really, we've been producing that material since 1991, and in 2012 they do the study that doubles the almost doubles the lifespan of the test subjects. And then really in 2017, some social media activity happens and the industry takes off. And in 2018, I stop and say, okay, well, now the supplement has landed in my lap. What am I supposed to do with this? And for me, I ask 2 questions. The first question is a moral question. I take the product, my wife takes the product, everybody on my team takes the product. I'm comfortable selling it to you. And I think that's the most important question, right? And then the next question is, here in the States, is the FDA and the FTC. And we're on the right side of those organizations. And so really it was 2018 that we started to try and bring this to market and to get it to as many people as possible. Now, I'm sorry that was a really long story. I just feel it's important to share, because as we start talking about testimonials, some of them, for me, I answer the phones. I like to talk to our customers about 3 times a week, and answer a random phone call. And the testimonials that they give me, I still don't know that I believe them. I'm as skeptical as you. I'm just sharing the information that is available. Also, we're going to talk about testimonials. So I have to say the FDA has not evaluated this product. It is not intended to treat, diagnose, cure, or prevent any disease. We got all of that out of the way. The most consistent testimonial, and could potentially be responsible for all of the other testimonials, is better sleep. So I don't know, how well do you sleep?
Well, that's a good question. So, no, I mean, having gone in and gone through your website, all of the all of the benefits there.
Yeah.
C60, as far as I'm concerned, is good. All of those benefits could apply to me and do apply to me. I mean, you know, I could sleep better. I'd love to slow down aging. If I could double my lifespan, that'd be great, because looks what
Yeah.
I've done in 77 years. If I could do, you know, look what I could do in 140 years. I mean, my God, that'd be great.
Isn't that crazy to just even think about 140?
Yeah, I mean, it's just wild. And
Yeah.
then improve my immune system. That'd be great, because I just went through, you know, the weather here in Canada suddenly changed, and I got my winter cold. You know
Right.
how when you get your cold,
Yeah.
uh, and then you say substantial weight loss. Hey, I'm fighting the 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 battle of the bulge like everybody else,
Yes.
right? And then improve vision. That is tremendous for me, because a lot of my listeners know that uh, in July of 2016, I was hit by a directed energy weapon, and the direct vision on my right eye was taken out. So
Wow.
uh, um, its vision is very important for me, because I'm a writer,
Yeah.
and it's you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Mental focus. Hey, who doesn't want that these days? I mean, just to keep up what's going on. And we who do multi-dimensional work,
Yeah.
i.e., not only this planet, but many other dimensions,
Right.
that's tremendous. Racers, runners, and hikers have discovered the advantage of more endurance powers. Well, I take walks. I'm not a racer, but I'm a hiker sort of. And there's some very other things. You put it very very. What would be the feminine adjective for virile?
Um, I don't know.
Yeah,
Is it?
yeah, but you know, in these days of being,
I think increased libido.
yeah, yeah, that's it. So all of those things. I mean, since you asked me a personal question, well, I'm just saying that it's is good for what ails you. You know, it seems.
Yeah. 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 And again, I don't know if there's a book that I read recently called Why We Sleep, and it's a really phenomenal book. I don't know if you've had a chance to read that book yet. I highly recommend it.
Huh? No, I haven't seen that that book, but sleep is something that I personally could use more of.
Yeah.
And so, have you found yourself or your staff, or anecdotally with the users,
Yep.
more better
So
sleep? Yeah,
yeah. So
perhaps you could.
go ahead.
Uh, no, no, no.
The
Perhaps,
most
yeah.
consistent testimonial is better sleep, right? So that's just across the board. In fact, even people, and sometimes it's really subtle. If you think about, if you were to sleep 1 extra hour tonight, right, and then you sleep another extra hour, the same extra hour the next night, and a couple nights before you realize that, because a variability of 1 hour of sleep on any given day is not a big deal, right? But realizing that you've had consistently 1 extra hour of sleep each night, it can really slip through your kind of radar, if that makes sense. So I've actually given bottles. There was a lady that worked in the office next door to us. She was going through some cancer treatments, was talking about how she was actually unable to pay for all of them, and so was skipping cancer treatments. There's been some indications that when you take ESS60, and I know you use C60, it takes me a while to get around to it. When we're putting it in our body, it's ESS60. When we're using it for industrial applications, it's C60. So I gave her a couple bottles of the C60 Evo formulation, and I went back and visited her like 5 days later, and I said, well, have you noticed anything? And her first response, like no hesitation, I want honest feedback from people, was like, well, I haven't really noticed anything. And then I asked her, well, so how are you sleeping? And her eyes got like really big, and she was like, well, I've been posting on Facebook that I'm waking at 5:30 in the morning. She was in the military, so 5:30 is a normal time for for her. And so, but it was the time that she wasn't waking up until she started taking the C60 Evo formulation, right? And so that's the real rub about sleeping better. If you read this book, Why We Sleep, it's one of the scariest books I've read, because what it does is it outlines very specifically what detrimental things happen to your health when you don't get enough sleep, right? And so, you know, don't get enough sleep and you've got additional cardio problems, you've got additional blood sugar problems, your memory fades, like all of these things. And the current solution for people who are struggling with sleep, one is really good, is to have good sleep, what they call sleep hygiene, where you like have a routine in order to get to sleep. But the other is like a prescription, and we're in an overprescribed society, of course, where they give you something like Ambien. It's a $2 billion industry. And in this book, they outline how when you take these prescription drugs that are supposed to help you sleep, you're not actually getting REM and NREM sleep. You're relieving the chemical pressure to need to sleep, right? So you wake up ostensibly refreshed or feeling refreshed, but you haven't actually gotten your REM and NREM sleep. So your body's not doing the healing that it needs to do at night. And so if we're helping with sleep, by the way, our product, those other products that are prescription and pharmacologically based, those products you take right before you go to sleep, and it knocks you out, right? So you don't get your NREM or your REM sleep. Our product you actually take in the morning. You take about a teaspoon of it. It tastes like olive oil. It's olive oil, or we actually have an MCT and avocado oil. You take that 5 mils in the morning, and then that night you actually sleep better, right? So it's something, and I can't explain why that's working, right? I didn't, again, wake up and say, I want to design a sleep aid that you take in the morning and then sleep better at night. It's the product that I've been manufacturing since 1991. They used it in the study. People started taking it, and the reports that we're getting are, you take it in the morning, you get better sleep that night. And I can tell you that for me, I definitely sleep better at night when I'm taking the product. By the way, I take the product all the time now. I'm about to start a study, a sleep study. There's a product out there called the Oura Ring. So the Oura Ring is supposed to be one of the best wearables for tracking your sleep. It's OURA, I think. And so I'm about to do a study. So part of the requirements is going to be that I need to get off of the product for 7 days and then be on the product, which is going to be a little painful, but I'll do it for the sake of science.
Right. Well, you know, from what I read, the ESSC60
Yep.
is a very powerful antioxidant. So you're knocking out all of the free radicals, and perhaps I'm just thinking off the top of my this perhaps could not be accurate at all, but perhaps the lack of sleep is the accumulation of all those free radicals that, you know, so you have all of this internal stress going on, whereas if the free radicals and all those extra electrons are eliminated during the day, well, then the body has that much more time to relax. How's that for an absolute speculation? Over to you.
So it's my speculation also. Like, are we connected? Because I've actually, in my conversations with Oura Ring, I'm actually talking to one of the grad students of the guy who wrote the book, Why We Sleep, right? Well, I don't think he's a grad student. He's collaborated with the guy who wrote the book. I think that's Michael Walker. And so the guy that I'm working with works at this Oura Ring place, has worked with the guy who wrote that book. And I told him the exact thing that you just told me, right? I told him, hey, I think it's because there are things that need to be accomplished while you're sleeping. One of them is potentially because our product is a known antioxidant and a known anti-inflammatory. And because of those two things, maybe the first, whatever, hour of sleep is spent cleaning up, free radicals and cleaning up some inflammation. And because it doesn't have to do that, it can skip right to other important things. Because people sleep better, they need a little bit less sleep. I'm not encouraging anyone, even on our product, to get less sleep. Get what sleep makes sense for you. but that's just what people are reporting to us. So I think your postulation is genius because it's the same as mine.
Wow. Now let me ask you something. Dosage, because I find that's something that's really amazing for me, because I went out and got these eye droppers from the pharmacy, and here you can get the eye droppers that have the milliliter lines in them down to
Yep.
it starts at 0.25 milliliters, 0.5 milliliters, et cetera, all right? And I for some reason, I'm a very sensitive person. So I can start off at a 0.10 milliliters and I can
Wow.
feel the effects of something. So
Wow.
my typical dosage, like this morning, I took 0.25 milliliters of C60 Evo, and that's my typical dosage. And
Right.
if I go to your online dosage meter, it comes up 6 milliliters, and I go, oh my God! If I took 6 milliliters, I'd take off. I'd land on the moon. And so, could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so the dosage calculator is an allometric calculation based on the original rat study. So you take
Oh,
what the original rats were given. If you did a per kilogram extrapolation of the dosage, then you would actually end up taking about 1 cup of this olive oil per dose, right? That's not, that's not how kind of things that work in your body that have an impact in your body, or that's not the typical plan. So like if you're talking about a pharmacological study, you end up doing this work on a rat, you figure out like what seems to be beneficial, and then you want to take that to a human trial and use what's called an allometric calculation. Allometric calculations are actually based, we know that the metabolism of a rat is different than the metabolism of a human. And the best way to kind of equate those metabolisms, or have a balance to understand what they are, is actually the surface area of the animal. So the surface of the area of the rat, it's cross-referenced with the surface area of the human. Then you get to the base dose, and then you adjust on a per kilogram basis. And so that's what that is. Now, remember that in the original study, it was a toxicity study. And toxicity studies, they don't tend to just give a little tiny amount to these rats and then see if they feel a little bit sick, right? They're trying to find this toxic dose. So one of the things it says is the material's not toxic. And so there is lots of room for discovery inside dosage. I have heard people who really need to take a full tablespoon. I actually take about half a tablespoon, so about 7.5 mils a day. When I'm having a long day, I actually, or a particular arduous day using lots of brain power, and I start getting a little bit yawny, right, in the afternoon, I'll take another dose. So I'll take 2 tablespoons in a day. Excuse me, 1 full tablespoon in a day. And then there's other people who, I think similar to you, there's a lady in my office who started taking the 5 mils. She was taking it in the morning and it left her a little bit awake at night. And so she cut back to like 2.5 mils. So there's a lot of room to play. Now, one thing I'm going to say that's very interesting, it's the big notice that I have, because I'm always looking for binary data. I'm looking for, so here's a perfect example of like concrete data. I used to get migraines. I have a spreadsheet that tracked my migraines 4 or 5 every single year, way back, I think even before 2014. I really started taking the product in earnest in 2018. And in 2018, I didn't get a single migraine. And in 2019, I had 1 in March. I would argue that the 1 I had in March was weaker, but I don't consider that, that's not real data, right? Because I didn't kind of record and reference and have information. But the fact that I didn't have 4 or 5, let's go with a conservative number, I missed 4 migraines in 2018. And so far this year, I'm on track to have, I've missed probably at least 2. I'm supposed to have had 3 by now, and I've had 1. So the missing of the migraines, because I've got data to support it, says that's, you know, that's concrete. That's something that I really have, can carry a lot of weight. And the fact that I feel that migraine was, you know, less intense, take that with a serious, take everything with a grain of salt. Take that one with a serious grain of salt.
Right. So what you're saying is that the individual differences as to dosage could be quite large, and the
Yes.
range could be quite large. And so uh, actually getting an eyedropper with a milliliter
Graduation.
range,
Yeah.
you know, instead of taking it. Now, could you talk about some of the cases that you've gotten, say people, what what they found, what sort of improvement they found, if there have been some cases where people it doesn't affect them, or they've had to stop taking it, you know, just to give us a feel for
Yeah,
this.
one of the things I told you that were, you know, one of the important parts for us is being on the right side of the FDA and the FTC organizations. And so one of our responsibilities as a supplement manufacturer and seller is to report any incidences to the FDA. We haven't. The things that people will tell us, right? They'll call us and say, you know, a full teaspoon of olive oil doesn't really sit well on my stomach, right? Well, you can take this with bread, you can take it with food if you want. You don't need to, right? Because olive oil is, you know, really a food. And so the ESS60 is mixed in with the olive oil already. But you can take it with food, and that'll help if the oil doesn't sit well on your stomach. So we really don't have any reports of any negative side effects. I would say of the people that in contact, close enough contact to know if they're experiencing anything, that it's probably less than 1% that that really haven't experienced anything. Most of them, again, the consistent one is better sleep. And I do think that if I think it's probable that even those people who say they haven't experienced anything, if they were to like keep track of how they felt and things they do and how much sleep they got and how easy it was to fall asleep and how much focus they had to, if they just kept a sheet and kept track of it before and after, that they would find that the C60 Evo formulation has actually helped them, you know, to enhance their health and their mental well-being.
Right, right.
And I can share, I've got there's a lot more to share, but I just wanted to kind of talk about the negative side of things there.
Right, exactly. Now, who is your typical user? I mean, are they more males than females, more females than males, middle-aged, senior citizens, millennials? What could you give us some of that data?
Yeah, so I think really we're dealing with some pretty progressive people in general, right? So it's people who want to take control of their health, right? Don't want to just turn their health over to somebody else. They're doing their own research. They're understanding and finding out about ESS60 and the original study. And that tends to be an older population. It's about an even mix of men versus women taking it. I can tell you that that we've got on the kind of senior side or more senior side for women, we've gotten a number of testimonials that it's helped significantly with menopausal symptoms. And so anyone who's in the process of going through menopause, specifically, I've got one video testimonial that talks about the hot flashes going away. And those are miserable experiences for women going through that. So helping with the hot flashes and some other menopausal symptoms. And so I think our audience tends to be a little bit of an older audience wanting to take kind of control of their health and looking for other options. And you know, the genesis of the industry is really this paper where the rats live longer, again, 90% longer. And so it's kind of those people who are looking, hey, I want to live long. I can tell you, I've had conversations with people. I'm like, yeah, this product could potentially help you live 90% longer. And a lot of people are like, yeah, I don't know that I want that, right? And then I ask them the question, well, so if you maintained your health, right, and you're still active and had mental focus and really were basically like you were today, would you want to live longer? And usually they'll say yes. And my answer is, well, this is the best research material on there. I don't know if you know this, but the next best way to extend your life in terms of research is to starve yourself almost half to death, and you can get a 10 to 15% increase in your life. I don't know about you, but I'm not signing up for that program anytime soon.
Right, right. Uh, so yeah, because it's when you come into, it's when you have a realization of that you're here for a finite amount of time, and then you realize what you've been able to do with this amount of time, and you say, hey, maybe I can do some more, that you're
Yeah.
motivated for that's sort of a big picture motivation to try to use C60 ESS. Is it, ESS C60? Is that it?
It's ESS60.
ESS60.
Yep.
ESS60.
Yep.
I've got to get that down. However, there are all of the other sort of micro adjustments, which, as you say, better sleep, better immune system, more energy, better focus, etc. Now, let me ask you a question, and that's the translation from rat studies to actual implementation in humans. What about that connection? How can you make that connection? Because people say, well, that was a study in rats. Humans are much more complex organisms. So what do you say to them?
Well, yeah, and we talked about not just more complex, different metabolisms and what impact does that have. So I mentioned to you, if anyone in your audience is aware of a longer a longevity experiment on mammals, please share it with you. That's one kind of quest that I'm on. The other quest, it sounds very dramatic, right? But the other quest I'm on is, what percentage of rat studies apply or don't apply to humans, right? So we know there's an actual number, right? It's 50% or it's 90% or there's some number, and we may have a hard time ever knowing that exact number, but we know that there's some number. And I actually asked a professor, his name's Iran Kutabak at the DePaul University, and I asked him, he does rat studies and he gets into human trials, and so he kind of knows this space. And he gave me this, it's a long example, but it's very interesting. So his response to me, hey, Iran, what percentage of rat experiments apply to humans? And he says, well, there's one case that everyone holds up as a classic case of why you shouldn't take what happens to a rat, that it happens into a human. And that case is actually a morning sickness drug. And they gave the morning sickness drugs to rats. I don't know exactly how they kind of assessed if the rat was feeling upset stomach or not, right? But it seemed to be helping them with morning sickness. So they started giving it to humans in trials. And unfortunately, it was causing somewhat random deformations in humans. And it's really, if every fetus had been deformed, it would have been really easy to identify what was causing the problem, but it wasn't everyone. And so they were ultimately able to determine that this particular drug actually cause deformities in humans. And people will say, hey, see what happens in a rat, you can't automatically put it into a human. The problem is, and this is what Aaron shared with me, is that they never looked at the fetuses of the rats. If they had looked at the fetuses of the rats, they would have seen that those fetuses were deformed, and they would have never given it to humans. So this preeminent case that people use to say, here's the reason you shouldn't take what happens in a rat and think it applies to a human, is actually bad science. It's not that what happens in a rat doesn't happen. So I kind of interpreted that to mean a really high percentage, 90+% of what happens in rats tends to happen in humans. That's my inference. Like, he didn't give me a number. I don't, you know, he's in the academic community. I don't know what it would take for him to give me a number. And this is just interesting. I don't know if you know that genetically we're closer to rats than rats are to mice. So a lot of our own intuitions about what is different, especially genetically, are inaccurate.
Right. Now, have you since you're a scientist, have you thought, or maybe you are doing this, have you thought about commencing trials and doing studies, or maybe there are studies going on that then you can in parallel show, look, our ESS60 is, we have these trials going and this is what we're showing. So we've got the anecdotal evidence here. We have the testimonials from our customers, and we have these trials here that are doing this.
Yes. So from the classic scientific method, you've got this original study done in 2012 in the Paris University of Paris. It's a peer-reviewed, published study. The next step is to reproduce that. So we're already taking kind of the preliminary. We've already paid for the preliminary test to kind of lead into a full-blown, potentially longer than 62-month study. So right. So we're talking about a 5-year study. That's step one. We're already taking the steps to do that. It's a really important piece when we've kind of been given the responsibility of this particular material and the benefits that it seems to be providing people. We've got to go through those next steps. Additionally, I mentioned like Aura. I'm reaching out to people who are interested in doing kind of research. The challenge with with the preeminent style of human trial, it's a double-blind, placebo-available trial. Those are millions of dollars, and in reality, we just don't have the millions of dollars to invest in that. As the market grows, that's something that I would like to do. I'd like to have better statistics on, you know, how much better is the sleep, right? So that's why I originally started the conversation with the author of Why We Sleep. And it was like, it's not easy for me to do a sleep study, but it's very easy for them to do a sleep study. And that's just an easy thing to kind of drop in the variable of you know, C60 Evo to that particular kind of standard test.
Right. Now, this is a question. It may be typical, or at least it happens very often, that when there's a new product that comes in, and let's say with a startup, and it's really, you know, an innovative new product, and the archetypal example would be C60 Evo and ESS60.
Right.
Typically, then you have a corporate giant that swoops in and makes an offer that you can't refuse, and then it packages it and it becomes the Coca-Cola. Why hasn't that happened in the 30 years that ESS60 has been around?
Well, remember, so yes, it's 30 years, and the initial application, so it wasn't until 2012, well, this kind of take it back a step. So they kind of theorized that this buckyball was going to be used in medical applications because it's a spherical molecule. It looks like a soccer ball, and actually any atom on the periodic chart can fit inside of it. There's actually a new symbol in chemistry because of this buckyball, and it's the at symbol. So if you take like lanthanum at C60, right, what that means is lanthanum trapped inside the cage. It's not ionically bonded or covalently bonded on the external of the cage. It's actually physically trapped inside of it. So they theorized early on that they could actually physically trap a radioactive atom, right, or group of atoms, and then they could attach something on the exterior because they already know how to work with benzene. They can attach that same chemistry tends to work. So they attach something to the external that will attach to a cancer cell. So now you have this kind of payload of radioactive materials sitting right there next to the cancer. So medical applications were considered and expected at some point. but they weren't expected. Kind of what's happened since 2012 is really out of the blue. So I don't think it's accurate to say why hasn't big pharma kind of swooped in and taken this technology as of 2012. You know, I mean, since 30 years, it's really been what, the 7 years, and really probably even a little bit less than that since that initial study came out. I think one of the answers to your questions, are you aware that zinc is good for the common cold and reducing the length of a common cold?
Yes.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I've been taking the magic formula for because I just went through a common cold. I
Yeah.
took the magic formula, which is you take vitamin D and zinc together,
Yeah.
and that's the magic formula that gets rid of your cold.
So there's a company called Coldeeze out there that sells, I don't know if it's got the D, but it certainly has the zinc, and Coldeeze is like, you know, a cold reliever. Coldeeze is a unique company because it's operating without intellectual property. So they don't have protections on what they're doing. What they have is market share. So right now there are people who are working on kind of, let me add stuff to the buckyball, and then by adding stuff I can patent it, and then I've got some protections. The buckyball in general isn't available for patents. And the big pharmaceutical companies are typically very loath to get interested in something that they can't protect.
So that makes nature kind of open source here. That's actually an advantage, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is, but it comes with risk. So like Coldeeze was like, well, let me take this thing that no offense here, but even Alfred knows that you can take vitamin D and zinc and you put those together and my cold will be shorter, right? I mean, we have the internet and you looked it up and you've got that information. But let me take that relatively common knowledge and turn it into an actual product is a scary thing, certainly for pharmaceutical companies, but even for Coldeeze. Is like, is this really gonna work, right? It's all about how good your marketing is. So it's dangerous to go down from a business perspective. It's a very risky path.
Right, but so is your point there about ESS60? Is that you're saying that one of the main reasons why C60 Evo is such an industry leader is that there's none of that the giants don't want to take on that risk? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think yes, we're taking on the risk, and really, I'm what's the right word? I'm passionate about this material that I've worked with since 1991, right? So you know, we're college kids. We create the piece of equipment that manufactures these. We're the first commercial company to deliver commercial quantities of carbon nanomaterials, like all of these amazing things very early in my career. And now you fast forward, you know, almost 25 years later, and 27, and we're looking at a material that's having amazing results. I'm feeling the results in my own body, and people are reporting these results. And what am I supposed to do with this? And I think the real answer is, what I'm supposed to do with it is share it, and share it with as many people as possible, and fund whatever research that makes sense and I can afford. And those are all drivers that I don't think drive big pharma. They have a sole driver, and so for me, this is less about risk and more about almost obligation.
Right. So there's a moral factor here. There's kind of an overriding social good. There's that this is that the spread of ESS60 is driven by an inherent moral good and social good, and that's part of the ideology. Is that
It's
kind of built in there?
Yeah, it's certainly the mentality here, right? The
Yeah.
mentality is we are getting benefits, our customers are getting benefits. Let's, nobody's reporting to us adverse effects. Let's get this to as many people as possible, because if there's the opportunity to live healthy and longer, right? Healthier and longer, then let's do that. Let's get that in the hands of as many people as possible. I feel obliged to do that.
Right. Now we're sort of coming toward the end of this particular show. Um, are there any points that you had wanted to bring up that you haven't had the opportunity to?
Well, I was hoping, and maybe, and this is obviously your podcast. If it makes sense, there's a lot more to talk about, and I'm happy to do that. I'm also happy to share how people can get the product if they're interested in trying it. Hopefully they are, and and really, yeah, try it and give me feedback. And if you happen to have an Aura ring, I'd love to get like 5 days of data prior to you getting the product, and then 5 days of data after you being on the product, and start collecting some really kind of interesting scientific information that can speak to. It's vastly different for me to say all of our customers are reporting, or most of our customers are reporting better sleep. That's vastly different than when we look at Aura data. We understand, like, and I do have actually one data set, and so this is just one data set. You might as well consider it anecdotal. In that data set, there was a 20% increase in deep sleep. So I'd rather be saying, hey, you can get a 20% increase in deep sleep, as shown by our 30 or 100 or more Aura customers. I'd rather be speaking about that. And so if anybody's out there who has Aura ring, kind of let's get that rolling. And then, yeah, just share. I think we might have shared with you a coupon code. I don't have that coupon code in front of me.
Yeah, yeah, we can go. We will share that.
Yeah.
But first,
Yes.
you mentioned that you would like to go into a lot of specifics, and what I'm thinking is, why don't we schedule a second show, and
Okay.
in that second show we will set out a menu so that you can begin to hit a lot of specifics.
Yeah.
Because in this show, I think we wanted to get kind of a big picture
Yep.
and get into those specifics. Secondly, where can you mentioned that you wanted to get across to people how people can get in contact with you and get access the C60 Evo
Yep.
ESS60.
Yep.
Could you mention that?
Sure. Yeah. So the website is pretty simple. It's www.c60evo.com. Like EVO stands for evolution, or like the sign right there behind us. And if you go there, like I said, there's a coupon code that they can use, and I think you have that coupon code.
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
mention that in just a sec.
And if they want to kind of reach out to me for the Aura ring, or to kind of have conversations, just fill out a form on c60evo.com.
Great. And what I want to mention was this, which I think is very, very special, because you have made this so that it is a win-win-win for everybody. And that is, if people go and begin to access C60 Evo and use the coupon code that we have, that I'll mention now, it's all in caps, ALWSPEC. That's my initials, Alfred Lamont Weber, ALWSPEC, and put in the coupon code, you'll get a 5% discount. But not only that, C60 Evo, 15% of your purchases will go toward funding the activities of ExopoliticsTV so that we can begin to get out the word more and exopolitics of this new news of the new era that we're founding on the planet. So there's a mutual feedback loop here. So as you grow, everybody grows.
Yes.
So I thought that that was very generous of you to do that. So thank you.
Well, we like what you're doing and want to find a way. Sometimes it can be hard to figure out a way to get those people who enjoy your show to kind of encourage you and keep you going. And so this is just a very natural way to do that.
Oh, great. And then when we begin to have our follow-up shows, perhaps you can make a list of those topics that you'd like to, because it's so technical that
Yep.
we wouldn't know what it is, and then we'll have that list, and then you can begin to cover them, and then they people can really get more in a depth.
Yep.
And then I'm sure in the comments section of the videos and of the article that'll accompany this, there'll be questions that will emerge from that. And so it'll be almost like a seminar or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. That'd
Yeah.
be
No,
great.
I'm excited about getting that done.
Yeah.
It'll also push me, because sometimes everybody needs a push to get more stuff done. So I've got like really interesting things to kind of share with you.
Oh, great. Great. So once again, the website is
C60Evo.com. So it's C60Evo.com.
excellent.
And
So
that
yeah,
coupon code is the ALWSPEC, right?
yeah,
5%. Yeah.
yeah. There's a 5% discount, and then 15% of what people are paying goes to Exopolitics TV and exopolitics.com, which is great because that's what we exist on.
Yeah. If they're trying to figure out a way to support exopolitics and live longer,
Right.
there
And
you go.
we'll all just begin to expand our realities, which is great.
Yeah. Very cool.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, and we'll be in touch about scheduling the next program.
Excellent. Thank you, Alfred. It was great. It was great chatting with you. Thank you for having me on the show.
Totally. And so we'll be in touch soon. And thank you very, very much. Good enough.